the country's image and strategic communication. The information we share reaches our enemies, because the enemy is not just the terrorist. Terrorism is merely a manifestation of deeper roots. Discussions on television platforms can have far-reaching consequences, providing strategic information to individuals far removed from the scene, enabling them to adapt their strategies in the fight. If the enemy shifts from direct confrontation to targeting innocent civilians, it reflects a change in strategy aimed at demoralization. This adaptation often stems from the communications we share.
This is the journey to one Africa.
Burkina Faso stands at a crossroads, a nation fighting for stability, torn between misinformation and the relentless determination of its defenders. This is the untold story of bravery, betrayal, and the struggle to reclaim trust. Our story begins in a small locality in Burkina Faso's north-central region. It's a region on the front lines of the nation's fight against insurgency. Mixed units of the military and volunteers for the defense of the homeland, or VDPs, were deployed here to safeguard the community. But as they were doing their duty, a journal article surfaced, spreading a dangerous lie. The article alleged misconduct by the VDPs, shaking the trust between them and the military. Officers, captains, and the VDPs began questioning one another. Suspicion grew and mistrust festered. The once united front faltered and morale plummeted. Troops retreated to Kaya, and the harmony essential for victory began to erode. As investigations progressed, it became clear misinformation was the weapon. A climate of fear and doubt replaced unity. But who was responsible for this manipulation? Was it ignorance or deliberate sabotage? The confusion deepened when the trial of DG Nabi brought new revelations. 400 million CFA francs, provided by the National Lottery of Burkina Faso to support operations, had been misinterpreted. These funds were used to purchase essential resources like motorcycles and tricycles for the VDPs. But the ground-level officers, the captains fighting on the front lines, never saw a single franc. The blame game intensified. Amidst the chaos, the issue of overbilling surfaced. Overpriced motorcycles became the center of attention. The gendarmerie took swift action, questioning merchants and municipalities involved. The case escalated to military justice, ensuring that those guilty would face the consequences. As the judiciary pursued justice, accusations emerged against the president. Some claimed he protected pro-MPSR2 activists, shielding them from accountability. Others alleged he interfered with the judiciary's independence. But the president, from the battlefield, dismissed these claims, emphasizing that the judiciary remains independent and impartial. In this environment of suspicion and division, one message became clear: unity is paramount. The fight for stability cannot be won through distrust or misinformation. Leaders, soldiers, and citizens must work together to rebuild the trust shattered by lies. A hopeful montage of soldiers training, VDPs working alongside the military, and communities coming together. Burkina Faso's path is fraught with challenges, but its resilience shines through. Together, the people of this nation can rise above misinformation and corruption, building a future where unity triumphs over division. This is not just a story of struggle, it's a story of hope, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a nation. I am doing very well. Very well, because rumors are natural, I would say, especially in such a context. It is to be expected that people might spread rumors, given the country's situation. Physically, I am very well, even though it is normal for some to say otherwise, considering the overall situation. 4 months ago, you came to power as a member of the MPSR1 with the perspective of rectification. 120 days after your arrival in power, do you still have the same feeling of taking on the initial challenge? We are more motivated than ever, more convinced, and even more encouraged. We are more energized to move forward. The motivation has been further boosted, I can say. Is this motivation aligned with the realities on the ground? Of course, it is aligned with the realities on the ground. You can already see it, even if you may criticize us for not communicating too much. There are various phases in the struggle, and as we progress, we will detail them for you. On the ground, things are advancing well, despite certain challenges. This motivates us, whether on the battlefield or with the population. Security is one of the most important issues. In one of your addresses, you acknowledged that attacks have increased, with civilian populations increasingly targeted, as well as state symbols. What should we understand about this situation? As I said, attacks have increased, and it is essential to understand what we meant. The offensive that started in November against these armed terrorist groups has led them to change their targets. It is unfortunate that now, I would say, they are cornered, which is why they are increasingly targeting civilians and unarmed populations. But this is also a way of rallying the population, to boost morale because it will be tough. But it won't last long. What does reconquest mean? We hear about reconquest efforts, as was the case in Solenzo. What should we understand by reconquest? Especially when we know that some areas have been weakened by the absence of the state and severe underdevelopment. The reconquest, as I mentioned, has several phases. Currently, in our global strategy, combat on the ground has not yet started. We have a first phase, which is to establish a database for intelligence, which is very important to us. Much of the war is intelligence. Second, some intelligence needs to be acted upon immediately. This leads us to carry out occasional operations to target certain bases.
Ce qui peut prendre du temps, c'est un combat qui se déroule très vite. Donc, en poursuivant des traces, les minutes qui suivent, si vous n'avez pas à agir.
There are also symbolic localities that were under terrorist control for some time. These localities have been reclaimed. However, as I mentioned during my visit to Solenzo, the most important phase is consolidation. This involves restoring administration since the population is present, bringing back state services, and finding activities for these populations. The idea is to organize the area in a way that prevents the enemy from returning and re-establishing their position. Regarding reconquest, ensuring the enemy doesn't return is a challenge. For instance, after we regained our positions in Falagun II, the terrorists came back. It's one thing for the enemy to return, but it's another for them to stay. These are battles. You can win or lose them. Losing men doesn't necessarily mean defeat. If the enemy had control, they would have stayed, as they do elsewhere. It's about consolidating our gains and fortifying the terrain. The enemy has tried to disrupt our advances with some resistance, but that doesn't hinder our progress. It's an ongoing fight, one that will remain permanent. We need to solidify our preparations before launching a sustained offensive. However, some areas are strategically challenging to pursue, particularly near borders. Are you referring to the proximity to Niger? Yes, and also to the other borders. There are areas near the three-border region. Cross-border pursuit requires prior coordination with neighboring countries, which can take time. In this fast-paced conflict, minutes count. Delays in action can result in losing the enemy's trail. But protocols with Niger's army are being established to allow cross-border pursuits and vice versa. Qu'est-ce que la négociation? What about negotiation? Negotiation is sometimes considered an alternative solution. Under your leadership, is it an option? Negotiation? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Here in Burkina Faso, as I've said, we haven't decided to attack anyone. We're the ones being attacked. Civilians, unarmed people, travelers, these are the ones targeted, arrested and assassinated. How can we negotiate with people who do such things? Burkina Faso is a sovereign and secular country. These values are non-negotiable. We are not here to trade our principles for anything. Those committing these atrocities must understand that we will never negotiate. Tendre la main à ces terroristes, reaching out to these terroristes, at the same time, as you take a hard stance, you also extend a hand to what might be called repentant terrorists, willing to lay down their arms. There's a difference between extending a hand and negotiating. I repeat, we are not here to kill anyone. We hope those engaged with these groups, especially those not ideologically convinced, realize there's nothing they're fighting for. There's no higher purpose behind their actions. Killing innocent people is not a divine commandment. Those who understand this and leave these groups will. Regarding defense resources, as I've mentioned, we're grateful to neighboring states for helping us quickly acquire certain assets, including aerial and ground combat equipment. Acquisitions are ongoing and it's not exhaustive. We've restructured into 6 regional groups with distinct roles. There's recruitment, training, and combat. Since we're at war, we need to ensure these groups are well equipped with intelligence, air support, and logistics. Our focus is on equipping and operationalizing these groups rapidly to strengthen our overall capacity. Question. Somewhere, when we listen to your speech in Solenzo, it feels like in the deployment of the new strategy, you recruited VDPs, volunteers for the defense of the homeland, before securing the necessary resources, equipment, and means to operationalize them. That's the impression citizens have. President Ibrahim Traoré. Of course, we cannot say that someone cannot have an impression. The VDPs are a strategy that we experimented with. The new situation is that we are no longer alone. The DS, Defense and Security Forces, are with the VDPs. The volume recruited was well thought out, and at the same time, we launched the process to equip them. If you notice, I mentioned that many municipalities that were already in place have been equipped. Even if not at 100%, a good percentage has been equipped. The national VDPs currently undergoing training in waves, the first wave that graduated has been fully equipped. So, we cannot say this wasn't planned. We are making an effort to catch up. As soon as the different waves are trained, they will be equipped before being deployed. That's why I said the war hasn't even started yet. You called for 50,000 VDPs, but 90,000 volunteers came forward, ready to defend their homeland. Ultimately, did you decide to take all 90,000 or stick to the initial 50,000 request? President Ibrahim Traoré. We will take all those who volunteered. We are just conducting verifications and assigning roles to some who might have minor health issues or may not be suited for field operations. For instance, there are older individuals and those with certain limitations who may not handle the same tasks as the younger ones. But the majority are young, and we will take all of them, equip them, and allow them to defend their homeland. Patriotism drives them, and there's no reason to turn anyone away. If we need more VDPs, we will go for them. Question. Speaking of security, we must address the issue of human rights. The army has often been accused of committing abuses and even targeting certain ethnic groups. What do you have to say about that? President Ibrahim Traoré. Thank you for this question. It's an important one. The issue of human rights often arises with the VDPs. However, it's important to note that we didn't initiate the concept of VDPs. We praised the youth who came up with it. We aim to improve this concept. We do not want to organize them as independent groups acting on their own. This is where abuses can occur because they might fail to differentiate between a suspect and a non-suspect. Today, the VDPs operate under the supervision of the military. They are formed into teams and commanded by military personnel, even at the lowest levels. They no longer act alone. During training, human rights organizations also provide sessions to educate them about these principles. The soldiers and VDPs are now well encapsulated in this framework. However, people must also understand the context on the ground. Certain behaviors, such as filming patrols or military escorts, can unintentionally aid the enemy. Misunderstandings can arise, especially in sparsely populated or uninhabited zones where reconnaissance is complicated. Your government has had to respond to concerns from partners about human rights, violations in the context of the ongoing fight on the ground. How do you respond to them? President Ibrahim Traoré. We respond by emphasizing that we respect the conventions we have signed. There is strict supervision in place. Whenever verified cases of abuses occur, investigations are conducted and sanctions are applied. For instance, in the case of Nona, where allegations suggest that VDPs targeted civilians from the Fulani community, investigations are ongoing. We must conduct ballistic analysis to confirm these allegations. It's easy to accuse VDPs or FDS, Defense and Security Forces, whenever armed individuals commit atrocities. But we need evidence to prove it. Some criticize your government's communication strategy, describing it as too closed, making it difficult for journalists to access certain information. How do you respond to that? President Ibrahim Traoré. It's not about being closed. We are in a phase of intelligence gathering and ground operations. Communicating certain details could jeopardize these efforts. However, once the major operations begin, we will invite journalists to accompany us to the front lines. We want the story to be told accurately, and journalists will have an important role in this phase. There are also concerns about freedom of expression and the press. Is there reason to worry? President Ibrahim Traoré. We have no intention of restricting press freedom, but people need to understand that we are at war. There are statements and behaviors that must be avoided. Journalists have a role to play in boosting morale and supporting national cohesion. During these difficult times, we'll soon launch a call center where people can report issues directly so we can address them promptly without resorting to public criticisms that might undermine morale or create unnecessary tensions. President Ibrahim Traoré's responses reflect the challenges Burkina Faso faces in balancing security measures, human rights, and communication strategies during its fight against terrorism. He emphasizes patriotism, accountability, and collaboration as key to the country's success. The country's image and strategic communication. The information we share reaches our enemies, because the enemy is not just the terrorist. Terrorism is merely a manifestation of deeper roots. Discussions on television platforms can have far-reaching consequences, providing strategic information to individuals far removed from the scene, enabling them to adapt their strategies in the fight. If the enemy shifts from direct confrontation to targeting innocent civilians, it reflects a change in strategy aimed at demoralization. This adaptation often stems from the communications we share, granting hidden individuals opportunities to alter their tactics. To address this, a structured channel for complaints and oversight will be established. However, sharing sensitive details on public platforms provides enemies with tactical advantages. Many television channels are monitored from afar, which exacerbates the challenges we face. Criticism of the media and patriotism. Regarding the media, there have been instances where journalists feel accused of dividing Burkina Faso into patriots and others perceived as less committed. Criticism of certain journalistic practices has sparked backlash. However, the key question remains: do those who focus solely on negativity truly love their nation? Criticizing without recognizing any positive efforts raises doubts about their genuine contribution to society. The government has no fundamental issues with journalists but expects constructive engagement rather than divisive narratives. Religious and ethnic unity. On religious matters, Burkina Faso is a secular state where religions coexist harmoniously. Religious leaders consistently advocate for unity, and interfaith interactions remain a testament to this harmony. Claims of religious tensions often arise from misinterpretation or manipulation, as the government actively promotes mutual acceptance and cooperation. Similarly, alleged ethnic tensions are unfounded and driven by speculation. The military and government initiatives operate without ethnic bias, focusing solely on collective national interests. Efforts are underway to support communities, particularly those displaced or marginalized due to terrorist activities. Individuals amplifying ethnic divisions often fail to contribute meaningfully to these communities' welfare. Humanitarian challenges and security efforts. Addressing humanitarian concerns, especially in areas under terrorist blockade, remains a priority. Despite logistical and security challenges, the government continues to deliver aid to affected regions. Recent ground-level operations to supply areas, like Silencio, have been marked by immense bravery and sacrifice from security forces. The primary constraint is the availability of trucks for transportation. Efforts to lease vehicles have faced resistance due to security risks, but appeals have been made for collaboration and sacrifice to overcome these obstacles. Relations with international partners. The country's diplomatic strategy emphasizes sovereignty and balanced partnerships. The decision to terminate certain military agreements, including with France, aligns with this vision. However, these actions do not signify hostility or a complete severance of ties. France's embassy and nationals remain in Burkina Faso, and diplomatic relations continue uninterrupted. The government is exploring diverse international partnerships based on mutual respect and benefit. The notion of replacing one partner with another, such as favoring Russia over France, oversimplifies the objective, which centers on equitable cooperation. Incidents with France. Numerous incidents involving France, including protests against its institutions, espionage allegations, and military agreement terminations, reflect the evolving nature of bilateral relations. However, these developments are rooted in ensuring national sovereignty and addressing public concerns rather than antagonism toward France. The ultimate aim is to safeguard the dignity and welfare of the Burkinabe people, which takes precedence over historical alliances or external expectations. Security. The primary mission is security. Within this framework, the situation that occurred on the 30th is deemed unconstitutional and, therefore, anti-democratic for some. The recruitment of VDP, Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, is seen as contrary to the laws of certain states. Suddenly, we find ourselves being denied certain things, notably military equipment. If we are not allowed to acquire equipment from one country, we will go to others. This is not the first time I've said this. Most Western embassies have visited here, and I have told them the same thing. If we are not allowed to equip ourselves for war, we will not sit back and watch our people die. Thus, we are forced to look elsewhere, not only for military resources, but also for economic support, as these two aspects go hand in hand during a war. Independence Day. You said it yourself in your speech. We are not going to celebrate Independence Day, because we are not sovereign. This is something that previous leaders never had the courage to denounce. How do you manage this? Fortunately, I am not in a diplomatic posture. Sometimes you need courage to do certain things, but not everyone has that courage. We have a vision for the country, a dream we have nurtured for a long time. It is this dream that led us to take the biggest risk anyone in the army can take. We took this risk because we believe in our ideals for the country. There is no reason for us to take such a risk and, when faced with reality, fail to make courageous decisions aligned with the aspirations of our people. Unlike our predecessors, who perhaps lacked the courage for political reasons, we are driven by the adversities of war, which have hardened us. War is not entirely negative. It transforms us through challenges. Ultimately, our only driving force is the well-being of our people and the realization of our dream for them. We will make all necessary decisions to achieve that goal. Wagner presence. We have heard rumors in the media about Wagner being in Ouagadougou. We learned about it just like everyone else. Some even claimed they were staying in a hotel here, which surprised us. This seems to be a narrative designed to isolate us internationally. However, this situation has forced us to develop endogenous solutions. Our country is capable of overcoming this challenge. For us, the VDP we are recruiting are our version of Wagner. International cooperation. Regarding international and sub-regional cooperation, what is the state of relations with neighboring countries? Recently, there have been rumors of tension between Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire, particularly because Côte d'Ivoire did not attend the official opening of the International Artisan Fair. While it is said that Côte d'Ivoire is close to France, which is currently distancing itself from Burkina Faso, such assumptions may not reflect the reality. Our relations with our neighbors are more or less good. We hope for more cooperation, especially in terms of security, as it concerns everyone in the region. Military cooperation is active, with ongoing joint operations. As for Niger, I have not visited yet, but this will happen. I prioritize addressing the pressing internal situation. With Mali, which shares a long border with us, we have made progress in mutualizing our efforts. Relations with ECOWAS. ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, is our common sub-regional organization. While it has expressed readiness to support Burkina Faso in organizing elections, by mid-2024, citizens remain skeptical. We are aligned with the timelines agreed upon with ECOWAS. However, despite requests since October, we have not received the military support we need. We are still waiting for concrete responses to our appeals for equipment. G5 Sahel membership. Regarding the G5 Sahel, following Mali's withdrawal, we need to assess its relevance for Burkina Faso. If it does not serve our interests, we will make the appropriate decision. For now, bilateral cooperation with our neighbors is more significant, given our unique security challenges, good governance and anti-corruption. Since taking office, we have empowered the ASER, Superior Authority for State Control and Anti-Corruption, to conduct audits wherever necessary. Arrests have been made, and even the presidency is under audit. This effort will continue to target all institutions where malpractices are identified. A new agency has been established to manage seized assets, ensuring proper governance and preventing future issues. Allegations of misappropriation. Recently, a media outlet reported alleged embezzlement of funds intended for VDPs by a captain, implicating the presidency. Upon learning about this, I ordered an immediate investigation. The journalist in question has refused to disclose their sources, and no evidence has been found so far. It appears to be a baseless headline meant to create a stir. Despite these distractions, we remain focused on our mission to combat corruption and improve governance. And we had therefore sent mixed units of the military and VDP, Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, to support this locality. It was at that exact moment that this journal was released. The young officers, the young captains from the North Central region, found themselves wondering who this VDP was who went and lied like that, because they have nothing to be ashamed of. I know most of them over there because that's where I come from. The VDPs are also wondering who invented this lie, since they are responsible. We asked for a meeting here, but it was said that their situation wasn't like that. As events unfolded, we realized that a climate of mistrust had developed between the military and the VDPs, creating a situation where things weren't going well. People started looking at each other with suspicion. You can see how one piece of misinformation can disrupt the fight. As I speak to you, the troops have retreated to Kaya and morale is low. There was a collaborator I spoke to and I said, "No, I don't think so." It was then that I realized they might have had another target in mind. But it wasn't the young innocent, once fighting on the ground. The young captains doing their best. Now about the purchase of motorbikes, I'll come back to that. But I must clearly explain what's happening here, so everyone can learn from this situation. When I often say that this can hinder the fight, here's an example of the events it causes, which isn't good. Furthermore, I believe misinformation has been spread. As the days went by, and with the trial of DG Nabi, I understood that 400 million CFA francs were given to the General Staff of the Armed Forces by Lonabi, National Lottery of Burkina Faso, to support operations. I think this information was either misunderstood or manipulated for unknown purposes. The 400 million CFA francs were indeed used to purchase nearly 200 motorcycles for the VDP, tricycles and many other things. Investigators were able to verify on site that these funds were not spent by the officers in Kaya, but by the General Staff. No amount reached the officers on the ground. This is neither proper nor healthy. Regarding the issue of motorcycle overbilling, it is real and it must be said. However, it didn't begin yesterday or the day before. Moreover, it came up while hearings were already underway. Since late December, the gendarmerie has been handling this matter of overbilling. They've been questioning those involved, the municipalities, the merchants implicated, and have passed the case to military justice. The prosecution has taken it up and hearings began last week. That's when some information was leaked. Otherwise, it's ongoing and those found guilty will face consequences. Recently, Mr. President, some citizens suspect you of protecting pro-MPSR2 activists who have, at times, threatened others with death. They also allege that you've influenced the judiciary to prevent these individuals from facing justice. Let me clarify something. We come from the battlefield. We weren't involved in urban daily life. We are very rarely in the city, so we aren't very active on social media. These are things we discover gradually. Whether pro or not, that's relative, and the judiciary is doing its work. I believe arrests have been made regarding what you're referring to, and a trial is pending. The judiciary is independent, so independent that we do not interfere in their work. These are just the speculations people may have. I hope the same treatment applies to anti-MPSR or other critics, and that those who spend their time insulting or defaming MPSR are also pursued if necessary.
This is the journey to one Africa.